when to use a tax attorney when getting involved in a tax problem resolution case. So we're going to be talking about when you need to use an attorney and the other reasons that you would actually need a tax problem case. And Claudia is just joining us here. So before I kind of introduce Claudia, and there's Claudia. How you doing, Claudia? Good to see you.
Good, you?
Excellent, excellent. Guys, that's my friend Claudia. I'm going to introduce her in a second here. But before we get started, as many of you guys may or may not know, that when you're dealing with tax problem resolution, there's only 3 types of individuals that can actually assist, be a power of attorney with a with tax resolution. They're enrolled agents like myself, there's EAs, and there's attorneys. Those are the 3 individuals that allow you to be on a power of attorney to be able to legally represent a client on tax resolution cases. However, there are certain times, and that's what we're going to discuss today with Claudia, that even though you're legally able to represent a tax client for tax problem resolution, you may not want to do that, or at least might want to get assistance of an attorney to be able to move forward on the case. And knowing that, I actually, it was funny when Andy had asked and Imelda had asked about whether I would actually do this presentation talking about this subject. The main challenge I had is that I haven't had a case where I had to use a tax attorney. So I figured, I wasn't the best person to present that. So I figured I would actually bring on an actual tax attorney on this. And it happens to be a very good friend of mine. Her name is Claudia Moncarz, and she is actually a tax attorney. She has 2 offices, if I remember right, Claudia, Washington, D.C. and down in, is it Florida?
In Miami.
In Miami, Florida. So I've known Claudia for quite a few years, being in the tax resolution industry. So I reached out to Claudia and asked her, hey, would you be willing to kind of talk about this subject? Claudia actually specializes in a variety of different areas in tax law. And I know one of her specialties is dealing with foreign tax matters. So with that, Claudia, why don't you give us a broad overview? What caused you to get involved as a tax attorney? I know you were kind of you started in the criminal part of it. And
no,
I thought you started in the criminal part of it. Kind of give us a bio on how you got to law school to where you are today with your tax practice.
Well, actually, the irony is that I was an English literature major in undergrad.
Wow.
Yeah, but I did my first summer in law school. I clerked for a criminal judge. Maybe that's why you remember.
That's what it is. Right.
And he knew that I didn't want to do criminal law, so he sent me to all the different divisions. And I really liked probate court. And I went back to law school and I said, I'm going to be a probate and estate planning probate attorney. And they say, if you really want to do that, then you have to take a tax course because that you really need that to be a good estate planner. Uh-huh. And I went and I took a tax course, the baby tax, income tax. And that was, I loved it because I actually understood the rules behind it, how it worked, as opposed to just memorizing and getting a good grade. Yeah, so I ended up staying an extra year to get a master's in tax law and never looked back. So my grandparents were CPAs, so I guess it was in my blood to do numbers.
It was in the blood. Oh, yeah. There you go. Now, you said, I remember when we first originally met, I think you were working out of your DC office. Which office are you more at right now, the DC or the Florida?
We moved back to Florida. We're originally from Miami, so we're in the Florida. Once in a while, I still have it, the Maryland, the DC office, but probably gonna close it down since we're here.
Yeah, makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Well, obviously, when it comes down to tax attorneys obviously deal with a variety of different subjects. Everything, as you mentioned, estate planning, hiring a tax attorney for the starting of a business. I know a lot of times, a lot of people will go to a tax person to kind of discuss the starting of the business. But a tax person, really like a CPA or enrolled agent, they can kind of give you the tax consequences of the businesses that you may be thinking about starting or entities. what a lot of people aren't thinking about is the legal side of it, right? The legal liability side of things. Can you talk about the importance of using a tax attorney in regards to setting up a structure correctly? Just kind of a brief summary. We don't have, if you can kind of do that.
Sure. Well, it is always helpful from get a legal perspective. Tax preparers, CPAs, they're brilliant tax minds. That's the right word. But just from the legal perspective, just making sure sometimes, for instance, here in Florida, if having a LLC with two members give you greater protection, asset protection than having one member. And that's just has nothing to do with your tax hat. Sometimes you have to put your legal hat, and that an attorney can help you that. An attorney that has some tax backgrounds, because they'll be able to speak your same language with your clients. That's when it's good. Also, it's very important when you have any foreigners, because the rules are not the same. I would say that I like international tax because you have your basic tax law, and then you kind of have the international flavor, and then you can kind of play with it. So, but it depends, because you can't always, what may work for somebody in Mexico may not work for somebody in Italy. So that one's also when you may want to bring in a tax attorney.
Yeah, I know when people start bringing up, foreign investors for anything foreign, I immediately kind of stop. That's where my kind of process starts. I need to bring somebody in that understands that because if I remember right, and kind of I read about it and see it, the penalties for a variety of different things in regards to foreign accounts, foreigners are pretty high, right? If you're not following the rules correctly.
Yeah. For instance, like reporting their foreign accounts. I mean, something that they may forget, and that's $10,000 per year.
See, that literally terrifies me. So would you say it kind of that goes into anytime you have a situation where there's a business that you're dealing with, an entity you're dealing with, or even a tax resolution case that deals with foreign bank accounts, is that one reason that you think that a tax attorney should get involved?
Well, if you're talking about the foreign bank accounts where they were not being reported, you may want to have a tax attorney be involved, because there's a lot of penalties and fraud penalties that you can avoid. We talked about the Corvette letter. If you come under a tax attorney, because then you get the attorney's privilege as well. Also, sometimes it just takes a little bit of planning, but not for the return itself. I don't think you need a tax attorney. It's more when they have not reported their taxes or there's some penalties issues. That's when you were an audit. You may want to necessarily bring an attorney, but it's tax return itself. You can do it with an attorney.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Covell letter. I would imagine some of the people that are here on the call or are going to be listening to this call may not know exactly what is a Covell letter.
Well, it's based on a case, a court case where, because attorneys, there's a difference between the privilege that the tax preparer and attorney has. A CPA has, they cannot necessarily go ahead and tell everybody whatever is in your tax return. But they can be asked if the IRS requires information, they have to give it. As opposed to an attorney, whatever you tell us is privileged. I tell my client, I'm your priest, your rabbi, your diary, all wrap into one, right? Because that's the best way you can serve. You can tell, as long as you're not going to commit a criminal crime, we're not allowed to actually tell anybody what you tell us. So when you have a client that you think is the case is in borderline, could be tax, evasion as a time, trying to avoid paying taxes, then you may want to bring an attorney. So what happens is that then the attorney's hired by the client, and then the attorney hires you, the accountant, to give advice. And then you work as a team, but you always talk to the attorney. And that way, anything you do, all your work product, anything you do is also protected under the attorney-client privilege and the attorney work product privilege.
Gotcha. And you are available for if somebody needs something like that. You're definitely available for that. Is that correct?
Yes. And actually, I've done that several times when the accountant all of a sudden gets a client and they're concerned that this may actually be it actually was a recent case that I had where they were audited, and they were concerned that in the prior years they had done the same thing, and they were only audited for 1 year. And if you looked in the totality, there was a concern that it could be fraud penalties that intentionally avoided. So I was brought in to make sure that we kept this small, and anything kept away from those fraud penalties, and make sure that all the discussions we had with the clients were kept confidential.
Gotcha.
The attorney-client. And sometimes if you think you have a criminal case, because there's a few, I've been practicing for 20 years and I was involved in only one, but in those cases, you will actually need to also bring a criminal lawyer, not only a tax attorney, but somebody specialized in criminal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So as you guys are joining here, if you guys have questions, definitely feel free to put it in the chat. If you got a question, or if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and I'll definitely call you if you want to do it in person. Kind of going back to what you mentioned, prior to us getting on this call, I had mentioned to you, I actually had a client that it wasn't a client yet, but a prospective client come into my office, and they hadn't filed tax returns in years. It was over 10 years. And when he sat down and I started kind of having a conversation with them, I said, so what's bringing you into my office today? And he literally said, Claudia, he's like, well, I kind of feel like I've been evading taxes. And I go, why do you say that? Well, I've been getting paid under business entities that I would start. And then once they kind of caught on to that business entity, I just leave it alone and go start another one. Would you say that's a classic definition of evading taxes?
Yeah, kind, and that may be borderline criminal. Like the client that I was involved, he, instead of paying taxes, he took that money and bought, I think was a Ferrari or something like that, or a Lamborghini. And then, so the IRS went and sees it, he hid it in a storage.
Wow.
Yeah. So when they do things like, and I mean, the code talks about what is intentional, and there's a lot of case laws. So especially in the one case that I told you about, we were making sure that we had all the facts. And when I actually represented a client for the audit, is just to make sure that all the facts that we presented to the IRS gear more on that side where it was not intentional. Make sure that all the way so that we could have a good case, because it wasn't intentional that this happened, but with the IRS, I could see it being driven the other way. So that's where I came in and helped in that way.
So your job was to make sure that when the evidence that you presented showed that it wasn't intentional, whereby the IRS could easily have gone that you intentionally did this.
Yeah, and all the fraud penalties.
And all the fraud penalties all there. Mm-hmm. Woo. There's a question here. Let's. I'm going to go to a question here. Tammy says, I have a client that has not filed in over 10 years, has a business here in the United States, and started a business in the UK that never made any money and is supposed to be closing. Once I get him into compliance, could we talk and see what is needed next? And he has royalties from the music industry where his dad has a hit song. Yeah, Claudia, definitely, Claudia, in a little bit, when you get a chance, if you can definitely just type in your name, email, phone number, kind of your contact information, your website information. If you could type it in the chat box. So Claudia is definitely a resource for you guys. If you guys have something that you'd like to talk to her about, have a case you want to refer to her. That's why I brought her, because she's a great resource for me when I have kind of situations like that. Going back to, we just talked about, obviously criminal situations where people are trying to evade taxes. Do you have a list of reasons why somebody should be looking at or possibly talking to a tax attorney?
The reasons why you want to, you can help them with tax resolution. Also tax planning, like we talked about. Ideally is before you do the transaction, but sometimes we get a lot of after the fact. So that especially certain taxes like state planning and international, there's more leeway to be more creative. You have a local audit sometimes in the audits is helpful to also bring a tax attorney. if the agent is being difficult. And then tax court is the other time.
I wanted to talk about that. You know, a lot of times you as a tax preparer, you'll have a client that comes in with an assessment, and literally on it will say, if I remember exactly what it says, is that you have 90 days to respond to this appeal, to respond to this notice, to appeal it to the tax court. Can you talk a little bit about that process, Claudia, and kind of what is happening there? When somebody is being assessed a balance, whether it's from an SFR or something that has happened, which is giving them the right to go to tax court.
Correct. So I always say that, you know, every time you get a notice, that's an opportunity for you to resolve it. You always have some rights, right? And with the notice of deficiency, it's usually one that you get what they call a 90-day letter, and you have 90 days, and they give you a date right there by when you have to talk to the IRS. If you don't, when you have to file your petition to tax court. If you don't, then it is assumed that you agree with the notice of deficiency, and then you go to the collection side of the IRS. So you miss that one window. So every time you get that letter, that's just one more window to present your case to the IRS and hopefully resolve it. So that's why you want to answer. And I know we talked about this, that sometimes some tax preparers, they are told like, oh, you can just help your client fill in, because for tax courts, you can use an attorney, or I believe their enrolled agents can take an exam and you can represent your client in tax court, or you can be self-represent. And I know some people can actually tell them, oh, I'll fill it out for you, and then you fill it out as self-representing. But I think that's the same concept as I prepare a tax return and I don't have a P10.
Gotcha.
Kind of technically shouldn't do it. I mean, people do it. Okay.
Right.
But that's that's the process. And once you get to tax court, you file a petition and they'll send you to appeals. And then you have one more chance to work it out. And if it doesn't work out, then you actually get to go to the IRS attorney and try to resolve it. If the IRS really wants to go to trial, then you should be a little concerned, because they don't want to create a precedent. So the IRS tries to resolve the majority of their cases, unless if they want to go to trial because they want to set a precedent and they want it on the record. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. And I've noticed, me personally, I always say appeals is your best friend.
Yes.
Appeals just happens, if you're having a difficult, whether it's a revenue agent or a difficult, revenue officer situation, and you have the opportunity to go to appeals, the appeals offices, you probably noticed this, Claudia, they're so much easier to kind of work with, because they're just looking at ultimately, how can we resolve this so both of us are happy and kind of move forward and and it also gives you a little bit of time to resolve that, correct?
Yeah, and actually the IRS attorneys are always they want to resolve it too. They want to clear their docket. Right. I think only one time I had somebody who was difficult, and the case sounded, it is a case where we were in Miami, and he was his Hispanic, so I'm Hispanic too. So sometimes you're giving things, but they don't belong to you. So they're putting your name and they belong to you. So his grandmother's boyfriend gave him cash to hold, and it looked like he was receiving income, but it really was a gift, but it was like large amounts. So it just looked awful. I know. Especially
in the Miami area, right?
Yeah. It looks like a drug deal. I always kept like, oh my God, this, and they had no records or anything like that. It was just cash deposited. So that one I had a hard time with the attorney there, but I understand where he came from, because I get it, because I'm spending a lot, but it just didn't sound right. But besides that case, I always been able to resolve every case either with appeals or actually with the attorney. Sometimes in the first call, sometimes even before appeals, I'm able to resolve it.
Oh, nice. I haven't had the opportunity where it didn't get resolved in appeals. Actually, I had one that appeals just finally closed it because the taxpayer was just being not cooperating. And a lot of times when it comes down to resolution cases, and one thing a lot of people that you have to understand is that when you're trying to resolve the tax problem, it's just not you, the tax professional trying to solve it. You need the assistance of the taxpayer because the IRS, the appeals office, the tax, they're asking for documents. And if you don't have those documents, you can't present a case. And a lot of times, and kind of something that just happened to me, Claudia, I've been going through this appeals process, and the appeals officer kept on saying, I need this and I need this. And the taxpayer just kept delaying and delaying. And he was purposely delaying it. And she just finally got fed up and she said, I'm done. We're closing this appeals and sending you back to collections. And sometimes that's tough. It's just you got to kind of work with your clients because there's a reason why they are in the problems that they got themselves into. And sometimes they continue that problem even after hiring you. Have you found that to be true?
Oh, yes. We have a team member that is actually, she is our little people that she bothers everybody to collect. She's persistent.
Yes.
So yeah, we have checklists, and I understand. Like I tell our sometimes clients, I think they're just so, from a mindset perspective, they just don't want to deal with it. But that's the best thing we can do is to follow up with our clients and make sure they do it. And also just, and then from the IRS perspective, what I always look at it thinking that I'm the guide and I'm going to take the IRS, because a lot of times the appeals officer, they just need the backup so that they can tell their boss, get it approved. So if you provide everything to them and a lot of information and give them all the backup, usually you get to what your result is.
Gotcha. A question for anybody here. Has anybody here, and I know Darren's definitely an EA, has anybody here had to go through the process of going to filing a tax court petition? And I'm actually going to share the screen real quick, just so you can see what Claudia was actually mentioning a few minutes ago there. This is a copy of a tax court petition that actually gets filed with the tax court. And as you said, Claudia, right, once this is actually filed and it's processed by the tax court, normally this goes right to the appeals department, correct?
Well, it's like a court case, right? So it's actual court case. So you file a petition. You can use that form or you can write your own petition. Okay. And then the IRS, like in a complaint, it's a complaint, right? So the petition is a complaint. So the IRS has to respond to it. And they file an answer, and it takes about 2 to 3 months. Then you get a call from an appeals officer. They're trying to resolve it. Since the only enclosure that you can put is a notice of deficiency, and you have to redact it, there's really not anything else that you can put to it. And what ends up being that you can't show your evidence in the actual petition. So you give it to the appeals officer. Gotcha. But this is I don't use the form because I don't think it gives you enough space to give your case, right? To present your client's case. So I actually just have my own, I draft like a complaint, a petition, and that's your opportunity to actually tell your client's story. I present it and give them the citations and why you say that the IRS is wrong, why you're.
There you go. I'll say something.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I accidentally clicked on stop recording. Sorry.
No problem, Melda. Awesome. Now, are there other instances? So we talked about obviously you know what? Let's talk about this because this is a big one, and it's a big one that the IRS is going after right now. Are non-filers. The IRS made a huge initiative to go after non-filers. Can you kind of talk a little bit about kind of your viewpoints as a tax attorney in dealing with non-filers? What we should be thinking about and kind of looking at, and maybe when we should definitely be reaching out to a tax attorney?
Well, they're not only are they looking at non-filers, but high income earners, non-filers. And usually when that is the case, it is good to, especially if you're concerned that there may be some fraud penalties or something that you're concerned that you will want that have that privilege, that attorney-client privilege, then you may want to reach out to a tax attorney because that way the client can honestly say everything. Because I think the best defense is having all knowledge. Once you can, all the client's information, all the dirty laundry, then you can, for the most part, every single problem, you can kind of like explain it to the IRS, every issue, but you really need to know all the details. And if they are concerned that they can't tell you all the details, then you can represent, you can do your best to represent them.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah, right now I'm getting a ton of non-filers kind of reaching back out to me. And I just saw recently, I'm not sure if you're on the same Facebook group I am, that, last month, the IRS actually has officially gone back to work. And all of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of revenue officers starting to make visits. And the group actually said that every visit has been 2 revenue officers because it's the one with the experience and the newbie that they're training. So they're bringing off they're going to start training up a new staff, and that is one thing that's going to cause a lot of these cases to start kind of popping up all over the place.
Yeah, they are, and also more now that some of the money ran out. I think people are also business owners are having now actually to deal with some of the issues that they were not dealing with a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about kind of what are a few things that you're seeing a lot right now in your practice in terms of resolution type cases. Just kind of give us an idea of kind of what you've been dealing with.
I've been dealing lately more with some audits. So we've been dealing with audits in audits, and we've been getting some questions too in the firm about cryptocurrency. Interesting, because people mistake it that they think is cash as opposed to looking at more like a stock. So that's been creating a lot of people that made money in the market. Now they're not, and they didn't plan for it. Also, it's just basically not planning for it, not planning for the taxes that you owe.
Yeah, I just got a brand new case recently. Guy owes $700,000 on stock transactions in 1 year, which kind of blew my mind in regards to that. So let's talk about. Got a question here. Tammy says, what is the best way to obtain an EIN letter that is needed, but the client no longer has? I would imagine just calling the tax practitioner should be able to get that. That's what I would do is to call the tax practitioner line. They should be able to get that. You probably don't have to hire a tax attorney for that one.
No, you don't.
Any questions, Darren? Saw you just popped on.
I did. How are you guys doing?
How's it going, Darren?
Good. Question for you on resolution. I got one that a vehicle is kind of biting me in the butt. They have nothing except they own a vehicle that's worth 12 grand. And there's like no way around it. So like when I plug in all their assets and everything else, the lowest the IRS offer will go to is the value of the vehicle.
Is it his only vehicle?
Yes. Yeah, there's no car payment on it. It's paid off, worth about 12 grand.
That doesn't sound like a very expensive car. A lot of high mileage?
Yeah, no, like 50. So what's the best? I didn't know on that one how much they look at the value of a vehicle, if I could bring that down to like 3 or so. The only other thing I was thinking was if they trade in the vehicle and then get a car payment.
Claudia, kind of what I would do on this one.
But I want them to get stuck. Like if the offer doesn't go through and now they got a car payment on top of that.
I'd probably just look at what is the low end used car value of that sucker, which might be $3,000, $5,000. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's gonna be that should not be an issue because the client needs a vehicle to drive to work, to get around, to do things.
Okay. Yeah, because everything I'm filling out, in the OIC paperwork is taking the value of the vehicle for the minimum offer.
Yeah.
But are you putting that? Do they need the vehicle to generate income? At least their basic.
Well, I mean, to get to work,
Huh.
but unfortunately, it's just taking it as an asset value, so it's an available asset.
You know what? You might just want to put the asset value of that at 0, and then explain it in the notes that vehicles used to go to work. Because they're going to ask you, why is the asset value at 0? And say it's the only vehicle that they had to go to work. And just
because they share one car. And
right.
So, and on that one, it's not, and I mean, they can't take out a, vehicle title loan at like 38% interest. It's,
No.
And describe how all the bad things with the vehicle.
Yeah.
The mileage, everything.
Mileage,
Can make it as unpleasant and as nobody's
Okay.
going to want it.
Yeah,
right?
just to put
Yeah, the
zero, but
IRS
attach, include a note with it.
Yeah, the IRS does not want to
Okay.
take that vehicle and try to sell it on the secondary market to get the money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they're
and
not-
I think on that, I was a better chance to put 0, and here's why it's 0 rather than putting 3, because it's still going to calculate me at 3 for a minimum offer.
yeah,
So I'll just put 0 and be like, it's off limits.
yeah, pretty
Mhm.
much.
Okay, cool. That's way better. Thank you.
It's an
And
easy-
oh, by the way, I'm having and I'm seeing the same thing. I don't know if it's people's conscience or just the way the world's going technology wise, but I've had 4 new people come in that haven't filed in like 10 years. And it's not because they got a letter from the IRS or anything like that. One has state issue going all the way back to 97.
Yep.
But so that's the one issue on him. But a couple of them, it's hard to operate in cash anymore. So I got 3 other ones that just need to get caught up so they can have a bank account and do things.
yeah,
But
it's,
I'm seeing a big influx of it.
yeah, it's almost impossible to deal in cash. In fact, I don't know. I haven't been to Florida in a while, Claudia, or even around the country here. There was a ton of places here in California. They wouldn't take cash, like no cash at all. It was debit or credit card. It's like one or the other. So,
Oh no, I ended up buying my own coffee the other day. My assistant offered to buy me coffee after lunch, and then the place only took credit card. So I just heard her say, "Hey."
No, and I
Sorry,
think
Valerie.
also if you're trying to get any loans or anything like that, or do any refinance, here in Florida, the prices are going really high for houses. So if you're trying to get any money out of your house or anything, you can file for any loans without recent tax returns. So either that's where I'm seeing it from.
Gotcha. Now I know
People-
Claudia, I know Florida doesn't have a Florida income tax.
But we have a sales income tax,
Sales income tax.
and they're relentless about that.
Nice. So, and that's a tip, guys. I've brought this up in a couple of my marketing calls with you guys. Target state income tax issues, because they're usually really quick on going after your clients, way quicker than the IRS. So, and if they got a state tax issue, they're going to have an IRS issue. More than likely, they're going to have an IRS issue. And Claudia, we haven't talked in a while. Literally, the state of California has kept me nonstop busy the last couple of years. I'm getting people from all over the country. All the people that left California, well, California is asking for their income tax.
Oh yeah, because California, New York, you belong to them until you can prove otherwise.
Until you can prove otherwise, and you are guilty and proven otherwise. California has been assessing everybody on tax they think that you owe them. I just had this beautiful review from a client that lived somewhere on the East Coast. California literally yanked out $20-some-odd thousand out of his bank account for tax returns that he did not have to file. He didn't have a California tax filing requirement. They just thought he had a California tax filing requirement, and he had been dealing this thing for years. And they literally just yanked the money out of his bank account. And I had to come in to kind of finally kind of show California, no, he did not have a filing requirement. And they finally gave him back his money. But the state tax boards are really vicious.
Yeah, they're in Florida. They actually can refer you to the state attorney for sales tax, and they do.
Gotcha.
Just bad sales, or not sales tax, but state tax. I had a lady that her Social Security was getting garnished by the state of California because she only lived on Social Security, only source of income, but she had a mortgage. And if you have a mortgage in California, California will send a letter and they will equate your income to 8 times the amount of whatever's reported on the 1098. And then assess a bill on it, assessed it, filed it, garnished her Social Security when she didn't even have a filing requirement.
Yep, that's one. They also do that for occupational license, for DBAs they will do it for, and for any sales tax license that you have, they'll just create incomes. Phantom income. So We got Tammy saying, let's read this here. Come to Nashville, cash is king. Currently assisting several musicians to get into compliance. Of course, I'm in Tennessee. We don't have a state income tax. However, the business sales, kind of what Claudia was mentioning, sales tax, business tax. Many businesses not in compliant. Was told by Tennessee state rep that they cannot only shut down the business for non-compliance, but they can prevent the business from ever doing business in the state again. Yeah. Again, kind of starting where we start this, a tax attorney is a great person to kind of literally have in your back pocket. Is that what you want to call it? But definitely have somebody that you can reach out to. And Claudia has her name and phone number here and contact information. And she's an excellent resource. And if you need to hire her for a case you may have, are you taking business, Claudia?
Yes, we are.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Tell me about your team. I know you have a completely bilingual team, right?
Yeah, we all are fluent in English and Spanish because we have a lot of clients that speak Spanish. Uh-huh. So we're all bilingual. Gotcha. We have our project manager that makes sure all our projects are done, and then we have 2 lawyers and 1 paralegal. Nice.
Mm-hmm. See, I got to run my business like you here. So someone just to say, okay, this case needs to get done. I have a personal question, and just because I'm seeing a lot of this, Claudia, there's a lot of people for a variety of different reasons, not only moving out of California, but have decided to move out of the country. Yes. For inflationary reasons, lower cost of living, a variety of different things. In fact, I don't know if I mentioned to you, Claudia, my plan is once my daughter graduates in 3 years is to move to Mexico, run my business virtually from Mexico.
You probably can.
The question I have is that I just recently heard about 4 colleagues of mine, friends, not in the tax business. They all moved out of the country, and they haven't filed tax returns in a couple of years. They thought they didn't have a filing requirement because they no longer live in the country. Can you talk a bit about filing requirements and the need for that?
See, the benefit of being a U.S. person, which can be a green card holder or a citizen, is that you get to pay taxes on your worldwide income. Whoa. Even if you're not in the U.S. So if you decide to go move to Mexico, or I'm from Panama, so if I decide I want to go every so often, I do want to move back to Panama and just run my law firm from there, I will still have to report all my income. You can take deductions, you don't have to double pay if you pay, the foreign tax credit or, exemptions for money that you make outside, but you still have a requirement to file your tax return. And usually those people get problems with the foreign reporting, the foreign accounts. Mm-hmm. You have to report your foreign accounts. And sometimes even it's hard for U.S. citizens to even open accounts, bank accounts outside of the U.S. They don't really, they don't like them. The banks don't want it.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you do have to file your taxes.
Yes.
So
all your friends are required.
All of them. So
maybe they won't end up paying taxes, but they have to file.
We still got to file it.
Yeah, the only way you can get out is to renounce citizenship. And I've actually, the more on citizens, I've seen it with green card holders that they don't realize it. Like if they go back home to their country or whatnot. And so they have to pay U.S. tax until they turn in their green card. And
I think they give you, I think it's like 8 years when you can return your green card and you don't have to worry about the taxes. And to renounce your citizen, they go through an equation and sometimes you end up paying like an exit tax, kind of. Depends on the amount of your worldwide assets and all that. And then it becomes really hard once you renounce your citizen and your green card to get into the country. So you really have to think about it because that means you may not be able to come back into the U.S.
Gotcha. I know. I'm literally getting ready to take a class. California just had this class recently, and I got to listen to the webinar because I missed the live class, where just moving to Tennessee or moving somewhere, or a lot of people will leave California, go move to Mexico, not realizing some of them will realize, okay, I got to pay my IRS, but I'm done with state taxes. California says, you're still a state tax resident. So I'm
For your
actually,
clients, if your clients are in California, they want to tax it.
bingo.
Yeah,
So-
and I had a client that was in Japan, and for 10 years he had to deal with getting away from California. You can't get any further away from California.
Yeah. There's a long process, and it's funny because I'll tell you guys the story, and you'll appreciate this, Claudia. I actually had a client reach out to me because his bank was levied. He lived in, I think it might have been Tennessee, or no, South Carolina. I'm sorry. He moved to South Carolina, and the state of California had levied his bank account for all his income. I mean, they took it was like $20,000-$30,000, took everything. So, and I'm like, well, did you ever live in California? He goes, I lived there over 20 years ago. I go, 20 years ago? And he goes, yeah, I used to live there, but he was a Filipino, but my green card had expired and I was a nurse in California. So I moved back to the Philippines. I lived in the Philippines for the last 20 years. But I always kept my registered nurse license active and renewed it every year with the state of California because I always thought I would come back to go to work. Well, for 20 years, he just kept on renewing his license. He finally came back to the United States, but ended up on the East Coast. And the minute he opened up a bank account, California took all his money. So when I had called California to find out why, they said because he had 20 years of unfiled returns. And I'm like, what do you mean he had 20 years of unfiled returns? Well, he had a registered nurse license for the last 20 years, and we're just assuming he didn't file a tax return, and his estimated income for each year was based on the average income of a nurse for each year. So that's how they came up with the tax bill. So obviously we went through the process of kind of showing him, his passport when he left the country, when it came back in. And so we were able to prove that he did not have a filing requirement. But that's how bad this stuff gets real quick.
Yeah.
Really.
And in New York is bad too.
Yeah. Crazy. Claudia, we got Rhonda had a question. I've had several clients like that with California coming after them with no filing requirements. The state's only going to get worse. That's true. Yeah. All these California transports, New York transports, wherever, their state agency is going to come after them. Claudia, can you work in Tennessee?
Yes, I have clients all over the world. Like I said, I have clients in Japan, outside of the US, and clients all over the US. So we can,
Gotcha.
I can help you out.
So she can work anywhere in the world, guys. We're seeing a large influx in Tennessee coming from California. Are you moving out here, Carlos? Actually, I've been watching YouTube videos on Tennessee properties. It's gorgeous out there.
It is very nice.
It's gorgeous.
Gatlinburg is nice, that area. The mountains are really nice.
Yeah, the mountains, the farmland. Actually, my wife said she'd like to kind of take a look at some property out there. So it's a possibility, but I think my official residence will be outside the country. I think the cost of living is just much cheaper in Mexico somewhere. So I just need to learn how to re-speak Spanish. A lot of people don't realize. I think I told you this, Claudia. I spoke fluent Spanish until the age of 7. Completely went to elementary school. Completely forgot Spanish, and now I don't speak Spanish. I understand it really good. I just don't speak it very great. So, yeah, it is. I think we. Well, guys, if there's any more questions, I know Claudia is extremely busy, and Claudia, I really appreciate you kind of taking the time to join us here at Pronto Tax School, and kind of giving your insights of a tax attorney. And thank you so much again, guys. Claudia,
my pleasure.
Claudia.
Her phone number, I'm going to actually repost this down here. Make sure you get this before we actually close this up. Get her contact information, an unbelievable resource. And with that, I think we're going to close out this call. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. If you found this session helpful, we invite you to join our Pronto Tax School memberships. You'll get access to weekly live mentor support sessions like this one, plus tons of advanced tax course trainings, private groups, special discounts to in-person events, a tax business growth coach, and so much more. Check the links in the description to learn more about our Dream Team and Forever Edition memberships, and join us today.